If you've ever spent 10 minutes trying to figure out which smart plug is actually the one behind your couch, you're not alone. Stick around and I'll show you a simple and bulletproof naming system that keeps your smart home organized, future-proof, and chaos-free. How you name everything is usually not on the top of your list. Let's face it, it's not even on the bottom of our list either. Does it really matter if that first smart light bulb or lamp switch is named something meaningful? When you open the device app or your smart home dashboard, it's not exactly rocket science to know that the only device shown on the screen is the one you just bought and installed. But as our smart homes grow, naming stuff is actually important. Before diving in on device naming best practices and examples, there's at least one common situation where the names of the individual devices is actually not important. Light dimmers and switches have a somewhat unique setup. These controls are typically installed permanently and hardwired, so you don't move them around, and they are often a set it and forget it type of equipment. I'm mostly concerned about having user-friendly names that describe what they do, not what they are or where they are located. So for the rest of this video, let's ignore lighting and focus on one device example, water leak detectors. Okay, I'll admit it. I'm in the middle of designing a water detection solution for a client, so I'm killing two birds with one stone here. Naming can be important. Candidly, for many smart homes, device naming starts out as something easily ignored and not a big deal. And I think I know why. When your system grows organically, you probably only have one or two of the same devices. Unless you live in a very large home, you have just one or two thermostats at most. Knowing where they are located, say first floor or second floor, is easy enough to distinguish them, and any simple name for them will do. You don't need to figure out a complicated naming scheme. Same goes for other common smart home devices, like a video doorbell. Does anyone even have more than one of these? Or maybe even the smart lock on the front door are all somewhat unique and easily located. But for some devices, the number of identical ones can grow quickly. Once the smart home bug bites, motion sensors, door and window sensors, and maybe leak detectors start growing faster than tribbles on the Starship Enterprise. How you name them can really make a difference in keeping everything straight and not driving yourself crazy, especially when you are trying to figure out where a specific device is located after you've moved it around several times, trying to find the best spot for it. Did you tell yourself, I'll write a note later to remind myself where it is, but somehow just never end up doing that? Guilty as charged. When I have multiple brands of the same thing, like a bunch of smart plugs from different companies, I want to know which ones are which brands. The features are not all the same, and the procedure for installing them, resetting them, or adjusting them can be slightly different from brand to brand. If you can't tell at a glance which one's a which, it can be totally confusing and frustrating. Basically, my advice boils down to this. Do put a physical label on each device with the name you have assigned to it. If you take the time to plan it out before you have lost the devices, you won't have to rip and replace later and start from scratch with tens or hundreds of devices to rename or maybe even reset. I'll explain my scheme in just a bit, but please only use it as an example to help develop your own. Don't use the default names from the manufacturer. They are terrible and will lead you down a bad path. Different systems such as Apple HomeKit, Amazon Alexa, Google Home, SmartThings, Home Assistant, etc. have different rules on the total length allowed for device names and which special symbols or characters, if any, are allowed. I created a scheme that doesn't hit any system-specific limitations. To start, I give each device a short identifier of 1 or 2 letters plus a number. The letters identify the type of device, and the numbers enumerate each device as I add more than one. Take water leak sensors. I'll name them WL for water leak and then add the numbers. So the name starts with WL01, WL02, etc. I don't plan on having more than 99 sensors, so a 2-digit count is more than enough. If you have multiple brands and need to distinguish them, include the manufacturer in the device ID. The numbers can be relative, starting from 1 for each brand, or be strictly sequential, independent of brand. That's either more confusing or simpler, depending on your own preference. Now, these short names are what I call canonical device names. By that, I mean the names are official and never change. If I move a device from one room to another or connect it to something else, the name never changes. Want help with naming your smart home devices and organizing your system? I offer private, one-on-one consulting to save your time and money for any home automation project. Use the link on the screen to get started. In all the smart home software and configurations, especially automation rules, I pay attention to these names for the devices when setting things up. Now here's the key to my scheme, or secret sauce if you prefer. I add a more descriptive phrase to the end of each name. Sometimes I add the name of the room or location where the device is located. Sometimes I add the name of the device function or what I connected to it, or sometimes I use a combination of both. Here's how this works. Let's say I have a water leak sensor I am putting under the kitchen sink. It's the third water leak sensor I'm installing, so the canonical device name is WL03. WL for water leak and 03 for the third unit. I add a dash or a space character to the name and then add the location, so the full name of the device becomes WL03-kitchen sink. The reason this naming scheme works for me is simple. In the apps, on my smartphone, computer, tablet, or touchscreen, I'll always see at least WL03 and know exactly which device this is. Even if the device name is cut off in some systems, I'll see at least the device ID. On most interfaces, I'll see part of the rest of the name, say maybe kitchen, even if I can't see the entire kitchen sink, and that serves as a nice hint, further helping to identify the device and location. Now, you might be thinking that this creates problems as I am moving things around, testing out different automations, or trying the device in different locations. It might end up in a different room, and then the naming will be wrong. A lot of smart home installers and professionals, including device manufacturers, say you should never put the room name as part of the device name for exactly this reason. True, but here's the important hack. I never change or reassign the enumerated number. That is always correct. If I lose SmartPlug TP03 or SmartPlug MER04 breaks and is recycled, I retire that device ID and never reassign it. So even if the full device names aren't always up to date, the software programming and configuration is always correct because I never reuse any device ID. Are you enjoying this video? By clicking on the like button, you tell YouTube what content to show you. Help me help you, and click the like button now. This system works to be super organized, but more importantly, it avoids chaos when that quick change or reconfiguration happens, but the names and documentation are never updated properly. As we all know, that is what really happens. What I also recommend, and I'll be the first to admit that I don't always do this, we should make a spreadsheet that tracks every device, documenting the device name, location, room, and function. Trust me, when you have 5 devices, it is no big deal. But when you have 50 to 100 devices or more, staying hyper-organized can really pay off. Of course, I put a physical label on every device. You don't need a fancy industrial label maker, just a common brother P-Touch, or even a label you make yourself. But please don't skip putting a label on each and every device. I try to put the label out of sight on the back or the bottom, but for devices that are not normally seen, like smart plugs or leak detectors, I don't worry about the aesthetics much. If you want to save time and supplies, just put the canonical text, for example, WL03 for the water leak detector, on the physical label. That's enough to uniquely identify the device, and for small devices, you won't struggle trying to fit a large label on a small area. Again, there's no right or wrong way, just be consistent. So what do you think? Have I convinced you to pay more attention to smart home device names, or will it be business as usual for you? Let me know your feedback in the comments below. I read all feedback and try to reply to as many as I can, maybe even yours. Now that your devices are finally organized, how are you going to control them all? Maybe it's time to bring in something smarter. Curious if Home Assistant is right for you? Separate the hype from the real benefits. Watch this video next.